child support and college education, there is life insurance for that, and medical insurance. College is a separate issue. New Jersey is in the minority of states which require parents to pay for their children's college as well as support after high school. In most states, it's 18 or graduating from high school is emancipation. Emancipation in New Jersey is a more fluid sort of a concept. For so long as a child is still under the control and educational sphere of a parent, the parents still have to support them. Okay, and there are some state Supreme Court cases which hold criteria such as the cost of the college, the ability of the parties to pay, the relationship between the parents, and a whole host of other factors. So it's not a given, it's negotiated, and sometimes the judge has to call the question.
It's an interesting standard because married couples are not legally required to send their children to college, right?
That's right. And there are some federal cases that are recently brought on equal protection. I don't think they're going to go anywhere in New Jersey because I think everybody acknowledges that children need an education, and when parents are separating and divorced, the children would otherwise or might be left aside. And so they're a protected class. Again, it's the best interests of children. There's a legal concept called parens patriae, where the courts want to stand as parents and loco parentis for children, and so they do special things for kids. And that's not so bad.
That's not so bad at all?
No.
Can you tell us then what happens with the property? Because we've already discussed what's going to continue with financing.
Property is divided under what we call equitable distribution. Equity is a term for fairness. It's not an automatic 50-50. There are some states out there where it's 50-50, and those states are called community property states. We are not 50-50. The judge has a bunch of factors that they'll look at, such as the earning abilities of the parties, who brought the asset in, who helped preserve it, the parenting responsibilities. There's an interesting one because a lot of the working parents who create all the income that goes to buy the assets somehow think that they should get a greater share. And when you have a stay-at-home parent watching children, the legislature recognizes their contribution to the marital unit. And so they say that should be taken into consideration as much as if that person was out there working and making just as much money as the other. All right, so those are some of the factors. Now, what you have to do is you have to look at all the assets in a particular case. We'll call it the marital pool of assets. There are three. It doesn't matter whether it's in the husband's name, the wife's name, in trust, a future interest. Okay. And by the way, now that we have civil unions, it's not just husband and wife, it's same-sex couples that also, because all these laws that we're talking about apply to same-sex couples who register their civil union. It's kind of like a marriage, but not quite. But anyway, you start with the pool of assets, and there are three exclusions. One is if it's a premarital asset and it still has that identity. It hasn't been commingled with something else. Number two, an inheritance. If there's inheritance that was saved, and again, still you can recognize it, it's still in an account, that's exempt. And the third is a gift from a third person. Typically not like the washer or dryer that somebody's parents gave when a young married couple bought a house. But if somebody's brother gave them a coin collection, or the wife's sister gave her a friendship ring, or whatever it might be, those are separate assets. The idea is to divide all the assets at the time of the divorce. Okay, and the judge it's like a partnership theory. When a partnership dissolves, each partner should get their share of the assets, and then they go their own ways. One exception, the marital home. A judge can delay the distribution of a marital home if it's in the children's best interest not to disrupt them. Used to be in the old days, there would be the custodial parent would stay in the house until the youngest child was 18. Not so anymore. Now, the courts are weighing the need of the children to stay in the house versus the need and the right of the non-custodial parent to get the money from the house and to relocate and get a nice residence so that person can have somewhere where the children can go as well. So now it's usually, the best way to describe it, if they're older children, the court will usually let them stay and finish up high school. If they're younger children, like ages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the judge would say, sell the house right away, because what do those children know about neighborhoods, school programs, high school sports, and all those things? They can find new friends, and they're very easy to make new friends.
It seems like the courts really take the children's quality of life into consideration.
Absolutely.
And here we've gone through this list of all the ramifications of divorce, and there's so many other things we could cover. With only a few minutes remaining, we haven't talked about pensions or taxes, and if you want to say a quick word on each of those, we can move on.
Well, sure. Well, let's talk about pensions. That's equitable distribution. Mm-hmm. Pension is divided, the marital portion, not the portion before the marriage, not the portion after. The marital portion gets divided, and it's usually divided under what we call a QDRO, Qualified Domestic Relations Order. And that's an order that goes to the court telling the administrator of the pension fund to segregate a share of the non-participating spouse's pension rights and to distribute that when it's time to distribute usually the participating party's share. So that's usually how you do it. Or you can value it. It has a present value, and if there's enough assets to offset it against another, it'll go that way.
So these just aren't vague numbers, but we actually get an accounting of what everything is worth.
Oh, sure.
There's
actuaries that calculate these things, and taxes, separate issue. And alimony, for example, is taxable to the person who receives it and deductible by the person who pays it. And when you're dividing assets, some assets have a capital gains attached to them, and others don't. So when you're dividing up assets, you really have to take that into account.
Well, speaking of assets, what is this going to cost someone? I mean, we've talked about the ramifications of getting divorced for those people involved in the divorce, but if they hire an attorney...
Legal fees?
Well, legal fees,
well,
yeah, sure.
It could be anywhere, really, it could be anywhere from doing it yourself.
You can do that.
You can. I mean, not a good idea, because it's really complex. And even though you think even though you're dividing things up, you don't know the tax parts of it and the QDROs and all the things we've been talking about. A very high conflict divorce where people are having custody battles and they're arguing about everything, those could cost $50,000, $75,000. Most of them don't cost that much.
Right.
Most of them, somewhere cost, in the average, between $5,000 and $10,000 on a fairly friendly case, and all gradations in between. It depends how reasonable everybody's going through that process will be.
Now, we've talked about how the spouses benefit from this or the detriment. We've thought about the children. But now, in our just 1 minute remaining, tell us about what you get out of being a divorce attorney.
Well, it's very interesting stuff. Every day, I deal with sex, lust, violence, greed, envy, and betrayal. It's better than the soaps, Dan. It's wonderful stuff. But seriously, I help people through a really tough time in their lives. And I'm dealing with people. It's almost like I am a psychologist or a counselor. And I really do help them out. I set them on a new path, and hopefully I get paid. And at the end of most cases, I get a handshake or a hug and thank you, Mark. If I've done my job and I've given my clients a good expectation of how it should go, and I get there, I've done my job.
A handshake, a hug, and a check.
There you go.
All right.
I like that.
Well, we'll end without the check and the hug, but I'll give you the handshake. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Dan,
and
thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Law Talk today. Please join us again.